Welcome, my friends. Well, today we've got a good one. We've got everything in this video in a small place. We've got witches and drownings. We've got outlaws and hangings. We've got not one, but two castles. And we've even got an escaped elephant heading down to his pub for a beer. What more could you ask for? So why don't you get yourself a little cup of coffee, a wee chalky biscuit, and sit back and join us as we explore the wonderful, breathtaking scenery of Mugdock Country Park. First up, we're going to head over to the old Craigend Zoo site.
So within its grounds for a brief period, there was a zoo in the late 1940s, early 50s. It housed over 2,000 animals, birds, reptiles, lions, tigers and bears. Oh my!
Oh my!
One story that was told about Abraham and the elephant. Abraham decided he was going to the pub one evening, which was a couple of miles away from Mugdock. And as he was heading down, he got into the pub, and unbeknownst to him, Charlie, the elephant, had followed him down. And I had actually got stuck in the doorway of the pub that he was in. And they had to call out the local fire brigade to get him sorted out and unstuck from the doorway of the pub.
One rumour is they then stayed for 3 hours in a good session, the fireman, Abraham, and Big Charlie the elephant. And is that not a cool story? The zoo itself, however, didn't last too long, closing after a number of years, due to the fact that in its wisdom, the local bus company decided to close the route up to Mugdock Country Park. Therefore, the public couldn't come up to see the animals, and the zoo soon ran out of funds, with all the animals unfortunately having to be rehomed at other zoos. However, if you look closely while walking around the park, you can still see the remnants of a number of the enclosures where the animals were housed. Most famous of all is the lions enclosure, which is set beside a cliff top that we'll show you later on. So this area behind me is the old lion enclosure, and as you can see from it, it's not a very big area, so in a way I'm kind of glad the zoo failed. Kind of always hate seeing these zoos with small enclosures, if they have to have them. Just my opinion, but a wildlife park is far better. Right guys, this section of the park is today's star of the show. It is known as Gallow Hill, and more specifically the Drowning Pond, and has the coolest but slightly macabre history. Right behind me in this pond, which is now a lot smaller than it used to be, they would bring women up here accused of witchcraft. Now, how do you prove someone's a witch? Well, that's an easy one, obviously. You try to drown them, that's how. And if they drown, unfortunately they were clearly innocent. However, if they do survive, they're clearly a witch, and off to that big bundle of twigs they go to be burnt at the fire. Tough times in those days, eh? And if the locals weren't satisfied with a good old witch burning, they only had to wait 10 minutes for a good old-fashioned community-based hanging. Yet, if burning witches wasn't floating their boat enough, all they had to do was pop off to the shop for some popcorn and head back to the pond for a good old-fashioned hanging. Your last recorded hanging took place up in Gallow Hill in the year 1718, when a certain chap called Patrick McNichol and his 5 jolly mates decided to get up that morning and partake in a nice little bit of cattle rustling up in Loch Lomond at Inversnaid. However, they clearly forgot to plan for the part where they didn't get caught. And caught they were, and they were promptly transferred up to Mugdock Castle Jail to spend the next few months in prison. A few months later, they came up with another cunning plan, this time to escape the jail. I wonder how our geniuses got on this time. Yep, you guessed it, they screwed it right up. During the daring escape, Patrick McNichol and his 5 comrades ran into the jailer's son, John Graham, who was brutally killed. And unfortunately for our main protagonist, Patrick, he was knocked unconscious during the scuffle, while his 5 friends escaped into the darkness. So instead of facing a charge of cattle rustling, he now faced a charge of murder. I wonder how he's going to get on with that one, eh? Well, not very well, that's how. Unfortunately, the 43-men jury who were going to try our unfortunate Patrick were made up mostly of Clan Graham and were relatives of the victim, John Graham. So off to the gallows our wee friend Patrick had to go after he was found guilty, and there ended the last hanging up at Mugdock in 1718. So if you're looking for a cracking wee day out, I'd highly recommend Mugdock Country Park. It's got a smashing wee visitor centre with friendly staff who'll provide you with a map of all the many walks and trails around the park, and able to visit all the sites I've shown you in today's visit. If you're hungry, well, you've got 3 different cafes. You've got Spider Monkey Cafe, which does excellent coffees and baguettes and rolls. You've got the Stables Tea Room if you're looking for a warming cup of coffee and a nice breakfast. They do a fantastic breakfast in there. And you've even got the restaurant down at Calder's Garden Centre. So, if you're looking for a nice wee walk and a nice day out, Mugdock Country Park is the place to go. So, we've just headed from the area where the old Craig End Zoo, or Mugdock Zoo, whatever it was called, and we're heading down to the castle at Mugdock Park now. It's about a 5-minute walk, and we'll show you some footage when we get down there. This, folks, is Mugdock Castle. Mugdock Castle was a 14th century castle. It was the stronghold and main seat of the Clan Graham. It was rumoured to have been built by a chap called Sir David Graham, or possibly his son, in 1376. Later, in 1505, the head of Clan Graham was made the first Earl of Montrose. Now, your most famous Graham was a chap known as James Graham, the first Marquess of Montrose, and he became an enemy of Clan Campbell due to their support of the Covenanters in the War of the Three Kingdoms. The castle was sacked twice in 1644, and after the execution of King Charles I, Montrose himself was executed in the year 1650, and all his lands surprisingly were transferred over to his arch enemy, Clan Campbell. However, in great Scottish tradition, shortly after that, Campbell himself, the Earl of Argyll, was executed, and all his lands, including Mugdock, were returned to the Clan Graham. Where we are here is one of the gun emplacements up at the top of Mugdock Country Park, overlooking Glasgow behind me to the side. And in great Scottish style, the reason we needed this was during the Second World War. We had the famous Clydebank Blitz where the Luftwaffe was coming over to bomb the River Clyde in the shipyards and killed hundreds and hundreds of people and flattened all the houses there. So we decided to build this up here in 1941 after the Clydebank Blitz, and in actual fact the gun placements never actually fired any shots, so they just turned out to be a tourist attraction after all. Alright folks, well that's us for this week's episode, and if you liked the video, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that little like button and take 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel, as it would really help us make other videos on different subjects and places. And until next time, we'll catch you then.